Now it's time for Culture Talk, where we discuss culturally relevant topics that you can use to start conversations about your faith. I'm joined today with astrophysicist Jeff Zweerink. Thank you for joining us.
Good to be here, Sandra.
You know, I saw something online. It was all over social media, and it was trending even, and it was about the moon's wobble. So according to this article and all of social media, they were saying that the wobble in the moon's orbit plus the effects of climate change will mean that the U.S. will face rapidly increasing high tide floods. So first of all, what was discovered? Because sometimes we get articles that don't quite meet up with what was discovered.
Well, I mean, it makes it sound like we found out this new thing we found out about the moon that's causing things. And the reality is there's an 18 and a half year cycle on how the moon affects the tides. And it's just, I mean, we've known about this cycle for, I think, the 1700s. So there's nothing new about that. But there's two effects that go into the size of the tides and any flooding that might go. One is the water level itself, which is that's the global, the climate change, how that's affecting sea level. But then the moon, as it gets further and closer away, the tides grow or shrink. So if it's closer, the tides are higher. If it's further away, the tides are less. And that's pretty important. But what this article was looking at is that when the moon is closer, it amplifies the tides. When it's further, it minimizes the tides. So as sea level is rising, the moon can mask that effect on the tides. And so that's really what they found in here, is that it's this combination of two effects. How high is the water from sea level rise, and how do the tides of the moon affect it?
So it sounds like then the new thing is really climate change and the effects that we're seeing happening. Is that correct?
It really does seem like that's the major part of the article. And I actually went through and read the paper because I wanted to say, it wasn't clear to me from any of the popular stuff where we were in that 18-year cycle. And so I was trying to figure that out. And it turns out that if you look at it over the next 30 years, that the tidal effect of the moon for the numbers they were putting out was like 4.5 centimeters of water or height change of water, whereas they're talking about 30 or 40 centimeters for sea level rise. So the moon actually plays a minor role in this whole discussion. It just kind of made for an interesting thing because for the next 10 years, they're going to be getting larger. Then from the 30s to the 40s, the moon will actually be counteracting the rise. And so it's that interplay between the rise and the fall. It means you can't just look at the last 10 years and say, okay, we know what's going on.
Right. So when you say 30s and 40s, you mean 2030 and 2040, that period of time? Okay.
Yeah, so from now to 2030, the moon is kind of amplifying the tides, will make the flooding worse. You go through the 30s or 2030 to 2040, it's going to minimize the sea level rise and make it look smaller, and then it'll get larger again.
So then the larger part happens in the 2040s to 2050s that we're going to have?
Roughly, yes.
So it'll be the climate change that is now, it's already to a degree, apparently, in the 2040s, 2050s, it's to a degree that the moon's small effect on the tides will then become magnified because it's already the sea levels are already much higher than they have been in the past.
Yeah, and I think the way I would say it is the sea level is rising because the moon is amplifying the tides. We're going to see it a little sooner between the 2020 and 2030. But by the time you get to 2040, the moon is largely irrelevant. You're going to see that sort of flooding just because of the sea level change.
Right. Wow. So then this whole article is really a discussion then about climate change.
It really is, yes,
right.
Where it makes it sound like it's about the moon, and the moon is really a bit player in the bigger story there.
Well, and no pun intended, but that's a hot topic. So especially for Christians, because to even bring that up could be a shutdown of conversation because some people believe that it exists and that humans are responsible and some don't. So how do we engage that? Basically, like our apologetic takeaway, if we're going to have a conversation about things that we see trending in the news, how do we have that conversation in a way that is winsome and also allows for fellow Christians even to have, to feel heard, but also to kind of inform them on a Christian perspective on climate change even.
No, and that's really a key point because, what I've seen are two errors. One is climate change is awful, we're going to destroy the planet.
Right.
And the other is, climate change doesn't exist, we don't need to worry about it. And I think as a Christian, I find both of those problematic because if you start with the climate change as a hoax, we don't have to worry about it. God's first command to Adam and Eve were to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth, and then to rule over it and subdue it. That we are given dominion and stewardship. That we're supposed to manage creation well. So to ignore what's going on is a mistake. The other mistake is to think that somehow humanity has the capacity to destroy the planet. I mean, God has really designed this planet well, and we can't inadvertently do it. I think that's just an overstatement of humanity's power, but there's almost this aspect of worshiping the planet, and it's more important than humanity. And so I think both of those are errors. And so that's where, as a Christian, I can come in and say, you know what? Yeah, we are supposed to take care of the planet. We're supposed to take care of the people. And so I don't have to convince the person, whoever I'm talking to. They may think climate change is the worst thing in the world. Climate change is a hoax. In either instance, I can come in and have a conversation where I'm bringing, hey, God's given us stewardship. We can't just ignore things. God tells us not to worship the planet, that people are important, and those solutions that we find are going to be the ones that take care of both of them. And so in both instances, whether I'm dealing with someone whose climate change is the worst thing in the world or a hoax, I can bring the gospel into that conversation.
Yeah, I really love what you're saying about making it people first, because regardless of where people stand on this issue, at the end of the day, we would hope that they would want what's best for humanity, even if they take the God aspect out of it. Like, what is best for humanity? And that's caring for the planet. So,
well, and I think there's really an important apologetic point there, is that if God is who he says he is, the answers that take care of the planet the best answers that take care of the planet are going to be the ones that take care of people too,
right,
and vice versa.
Right. Well, all good stuff. Thank you so much for shedding some light on this topic. If you'd like to hear more from Jeff Zweerink, go to reasons.org and search for his blog, Impact Events.